So I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Linda Katz. I'm a nurse practitioner here. I already told you a little bit, but I will tell for the general viewing audience. I've been here for 3 years, and I came from endocrinology, where I took care of a lot of people with diabetes, and I am always impressed with what diet and exercise can do to our health. It's probably one of the most powerful things that I see. I see it on a regular basis, and it is crazy. I see blood pressure lowering, depression meds lowered. I see fatty liver disease that's reversed, diabetes that's not reversed but significantly improved with diet and exercise, or just the prevention of diabetes is just staggering. Right now, CDC estimates that that by the year 2030, that 1 out of 2 people will have diabetes. So this is something that we have to pay a lot of attention to. The children born today have a 40% risk of acquiring diabetes in their lifetime. So this is really really kind of, if you will, a national emergency. We really have to be on top of this, and we have to do something about this. I was really taken aback when I first started this job. Here I had worked in diabetes for a long, long time. I went, coincidentally, when I started, I went to a 4-day conference on carbohydrates, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to learn so much about this for my patients. I'm going to be able to bring all of this information, and that's how I started until I went there, and I was like, oh my God, this is personal. It was all about carbohydrates. It was all about insulin, and it was really overwhelming what carbohydrates, the role that they play in our lives, that I really was unaware of. And so it really is. It's about carbohydrates. It's about insulin. It's about keeping your insulin levels as level as possible. And we hope to do that through diet and exercise, and you can do it through diet and exercise. So today I'm going to do a nutrition lecture. And that's one of the things that I hope that people get from our program. I think that when we do, like I do post evaluations when people are leaving, or even during the process, like what makes a difference to you at WeCare, and frequently people say it's the information that they get that's very eye-opening on nutrition. And so we'll start, and if you guys have any questions, you can ask them at the end. Okay, so nutrition. What is wellness? A healthy balance of mind, body, and spirit that results in an overall feeling of well-being, an active process of becoming aware of and making choices toward, a more successful existence. The constant, conscious pursuit of living life to its fullest potential. Many factors contribute to our wellness: eating healthy, regular exercise, a balance in career, family, and relationships, living in a clean environment, and I would say an organized environment, spiritual awareness. WeCare and wellness. We'll talk about nutrition, exercise, mindfulness, sleep management, stress management, and sleep. Where do we get our energy from? We get our energy from actually 4 macronutrients. One of them is alcohol. The other ones that we'll talk about: carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Carbohydrates, the main metabolic function of a carbohydrate is to provide energy. All fiber is derived from carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are stored as glycogen in the liver and the muscles in a limited quantity. The additional intake is stored as fat. So I have this is my visual. For anybody who sees me here at WeCare, this is my visual. And I do want you guys to just hold this before I leave today, because it's very impressive. This is not to discourage you. This is 5 pounds of fat, and I hope to encourage you by you just holding it, especially new patients. And I want you to just, when you hold this, I want you to appreciate that fat is not a lot of our problem here in our culture today. Fat is not making us fat. Yes, excess fat, excess protein, excess carbohydrates can make us fat, but by and large, it is the amount of carbohydrates that we're eating. And that's kind of something that's, that people might not think about. You ingest carbohydrates. Well, the excess, if we don't need it, and we don't need a lot of carbohydrates at the time. If we were all, cavemen hunting, or we were all marathoners, we could use up all of these carbohydrates quite easily, but we are not. And so the excess is stored as fat really very quickly. So So later, I'll give you the pleasure. It will be like elementary school, and I'll pass it around. So anyway, but this is, you know, kind of like, you know, when you think about it, you know, all of us who lived through the 70s, that low-fat craze. And do you remember this low-fat craze where we were eating rice cakes and pretzels, and we really thought that was the key to weight loss? And what we have realized that that was when our obesity rate soared. And I'll tell you just a little interesting story. When I was at that conference, there was a doctor from, I think it was Copenhagen, who talked about their country's obesity epidemic. And they were following the United States. And he, you know, when we came out with the cover of the Time magazine that had the 2 eggs on the front of it, that, you know, were talked about how with the bacon with a frown, you know, and that really started, or was the beginning of the low-fat craze. And they followed suit. And he showed a graph in butter and butter sales in the country, and the butter sales plummeted. There was an excess of butter because everybody was eating low fat. Well, they thought about this, and they started tracking their obesity rates, and their obesity epidemic went crazy. So they started talking about, you know, not omitting fats in the diet, and then their butter sales went way up, and then they started having crime, and people were stealing butter. So it's really, you know, very interesting, you know, how wrong we had it back in the 70s, back in the day. So So simple versus complex carbohydrates. There are good and bad carbohydrates, and that's how we really talk about them. Complex or good carbohydrates do not raise blood sugar as much as a simple carb. Complex carbohydrates are packaged in foods that contain fiber, protein, or fat. Examples are fruits, vegetables, yogurt. Other would be whole grains like quinoa, millet, farro, wild rice. Refined or bad carbohydrates raise blood sugar almost immediately. The refined carbohydrates include sugars, sweetened soft drinks, breakfast cereals, white rice, pasta, white bread, pastries, cookies, and crackers. Fiber adds volume but not calories to the food. Fiber is also known as roughage and includes all plant parts that your body cannot absorb. Fiber improves feelings of fullness or satiety. Fiber helps your digestive tract function properly, and it prevents constipation. Fiber may help reduce risk of obesity, heart disease, colon cancer, elevated cholesterol or hyperlipidemia, and diabetes. Interestingly, when people start a low-carb diet, and you may notice this, it can increase the constipation, and so that's something that we'll talk about. But fiber, you know, can help combat that too. Recommended fiber intake is for women and men is right there for you. Fiber, high fiber foods, the whole grain products, which are the farro, quinoa, millet, wild rice, not brown rice. Have you guys tried any of these? You don't have to say, but you can nod. But have any of you tried these more like designer sounding, or maybe
quinoa?
more,
No.
the quinoa? The quinoa is delicious. It's very nutty, high in protein. Farro tastes very much rice-like, and it's actually really good.
How do you spell farro?
Pardon me?
How do you spell farro?
Farro. Also, foods high in fiber, fruits, vegetables, beans, and other legumes, come on in, and nuts and seeds. Protein. The main metabolic function of protein is for use in the synthesis of structural and functional proteins, body proteins. Proteins are made from amino acids that help build muscles, blood, skin, hair, nails, and internal organs. They help make enzymes that regulate bodily functions. So when we think about proteins, you know, we classically think, oh, this is what our proteins are for, is externally, because the more muscle mass we have, the higher our metabolic rate is. So we definitely talk about getting enough protein. But inside the body, protein's doing big things. And these are some of them. Protein is also a source of fuel. Protein is the most satiating of all the macronutrients. Excess protein, again, is stored as fat. Animal sources of protein include meat, poultry, fish, dairy, and eggs. The most robust of the protein are probably your meat sources. For instance, a breast of chicken can be 100 at 150-ish calories, can have like 55 grams of protein. That's why we love journaling. It is something that we'd like to take a look at whenever you come in, because it is important that you are losing your weight from fat and not muscle. And so making sure you're getting plenty of exercise and eating plenty of protein. That's why we're big advocates of the the phone apps that can really kind of track that. And if you ever want to do that and you need help, we got good people in our practice that can help you with those apps and get you all set up, so you really don't even have to set it up. So we have people there, and they're going to love that I'm saying that. And you know, eggs, dairy, you might get 8 or 10 milligrams of protein. So just to give you an example, something to compare it to, less with nuts or legumes. Vegetarian sources of protein: legumes, seeds, nuts, grains, vegetables, soy. Eating protein at each meal helps stabilize your blood sugar. Eating adequate protein prevents the breakdown of lean body mass, and that's what we track whenever you come here. When you stand on our fancy scale, it's looking at your lean muscle mass, your water mass, and your fat mass. So we will track that. And it takes more calories to break down protein than other of the macronutrients. Fats. The metabolic function of fats serve as a source of energy. Fats serve as a precursor or make hormones. Fats contribute to the structural components of the cell. The cellular membranes, they give the cell stability, the membrane stability. Fats are the most energy dense of the macronutrients. Excess intake of fat is stored as fat. Fats, your body makes its own fat from taking in excess calories. Dietary fats are found in foods from plants and animals. Some dietary fats are healthier than others. So the monosaturated and polyunsaturated fats improve blood cholesterol levels. They decrease the risk of heart disease, may benefit insulin levels and blood sugar control, may decrease the risk of type 2 diabetes, are liquid at room temperature. So we talk about the fish oil, and that is one of the omega-3 fatty acid. And these are, some of the benefits of taking fish oil. And think back, and I talk to my patients and have heard me talk about eating like a cave woman or a caveman. And you can think about when back in the caveman, cavewoman days, people were eating a lot of fish. And there's a lot of potential, health benefits from eating the omega-3 fatty acids. So we do talk about that quite a bit. The healthy fats, the MUFAs or monounsaturated fats: olive oil, avocado oil, which is kind of a new thing, macadamia oil, sesame oil, nuts, and avocados. And just an aside about nuts, the fats in nuts can get rancid quite quickly. So I tell people, pre-portion those nuts and throw them in the freezer and just, grab them on your way. So don't keep them at room temperature for very long, because those oils can go bad. So the polyunsaturated vegetable oils: walnut, grapeseed, soy, corn, fish, canola oil, sunflower oil and seeds, cottonseed oil, flax oil and seeds. Heat and light can damage oils, particularly the polyunsaturated oils. The smoke point of an oil is the temperature of which the oil starts to break down, releasing free radicals, which can be toxic. So we do talk about the stability of the oils, and you are going to get a nice stable oil from like coconut oil or butter, and that is helps with our health too, to just pay attention to that too. The oils vary in their stability based on saturated versus monosaturated versus polyunsaturated. Refined oils are more stable with a higher smoke point, like light refined olive oil, clarified butter, which is also called ghee, and they do sell that. So omega-3 fatty acids are a type of polyunsaturated fatty acids that improves cholesterol, particularly triglycerides. They decrease them. They decreases risk of Arrhythmias, which is an irregular heartbeat, and sudden death may decrease risk of coronary artery disease, reduces inflammation, may help with depression, improves prenatal health and fetal neurologic development, may improve ADHD, may help prevent dementia. Sources include cold water fish like salmon, mackerel, herring, tuna, swordfish, sardines, algae, flaxseed, and walnuts. Harmful fats include saturated fats and trans fat. Increased risk of cardiovascular disease, increased risk for type 2 diabetes, increased risk for obesity, certain types of cancer, and they are solid at room temperature. So the saturated fats, beef, cheese, grain-based desserts, lard, butter, coconut oil, palm oil, and other tropical oils. Limit saturated fats to less than 10% of the total body weight. Recent meta-analysis from 2014 in the Annals of Internal Medicine showed that saturated fats had no effect on heart disease. So all of those saturated fats that we just listed that were thought to be harmful may not be that harmful. So when I talk about this, it's important when we're reducing carbohydrates in the diet that we think about ways to make the other foods a little bit more palatable. And maybe butter is a way. We know butter has butyric acid, which can actually beef up or improve that belly flora, that gut flora that the scientists are talking a lot right now. This is a really exciting area of research. The healthier our gut bacteria may mean decreased risk for disease, and that may mean inflammation, insulin resistance, improve our immune systems. So that is, when we talk about like our gut flora, there are certain things that can improve that. Butter is one of them. Other things, fermented vegetables, fermented drinks, kefir, yogurts. But there's a lot of exciting information coming up about that healthy gut flora. So butter, but what I do say about these saturated fats that now may not be as harmful as we thought, measure them. Include them in your calories because they are very calorically dense, and you don't want to eat a diet high in, saturated fat. So the trans fats were linked to a higher risk for heart disease. We'll talk about that in a second. Omega-3s were linked to a decreased risk. Another meta-analysis in the journal Clinical Nutrition showed no evidence that dietary saturated fat was associated with an increased risk for cardiovascular disease. Cardiovascular disease risks are likely to be influenced by specific nutrients used to replace saturated fats, carbohydrates, trans fats. Saturated fats include animal sources: beef, poultry, pork, lamb, lunch meats, egg yolks, dairy. Plant sources: palm oil, coconut oil, cocoa butter. And that is what is controversial right now. Harmful fats really are the trans fats. The trans fats gained popularity in the 1940s. They provided a desirable taste and texture. They extended the shelf life significantly and were cheaper than the animal-based fats, lard and butter. Artificial trans fats are made through a partial hydrogenation of unsaturated fats. So you'll see it says partially hydrogenated oils in the ingredients. Sources could be margarine, snack foods, prepackaged desserts such as cookies and cakes, naturally occurring sources such as meat and dairy products. In 2002, the Institute of Medicine found that there was no safe level of trans fats. Avoid trans fats from processed food. November 13th, the FDA proposed measures that would almost eliminate artificial trans fats from the food supply. Artificial trans fats are a major contributor to heart disease in America. Banning artificial trans fats could prevent 20,000 heart attacks and 7,000 deaths from heart disease per year. The problem is, right now, when they need to disclose trans fats over a certain amount, they can have trans fats under that certain amount. If you eat multiple servings, which most people do, and because their servings for crackers may be 4 crackers, and so you can then add those portions together and get an appreciable amount of trans fats. So Getting rid of processed foods is really a biggie here. You know, we talk about that being that cave woman, and fruits, vegetables, nuts, meats, eggs, dairy, whole grains, and trying to do that as much as you can. And this is why, as of June 15th, the FDA gave manufacturers 3 years to remove them artificial trans fats from the nation's food supply, and that will be in 2018, hopefully. So fats versus cholesterol, and this is kind of confusing. Lipids include fats, oils, waxes, and sterols, including cholesterol and triglycerides. Fat does not equal cholesterol. Fats equals saturated, unsaturated fatty acids. Cholesterol, or sterols, are a combination of steroids and alcohol. Fats and cholesterols have very different structure, a chain versus a ring. Fat provides energy in calories, cholesterol does not. So your cholesterol is really the transport for your fats, and that you will recognize your LDL, HDL, that low density or lousy cholesterol, and the HDL, that high density and good cholesterol. And the good cholesterol really transports that fat away. So, you know, I learned this about, you know, you've got your garbage and you've got your garbage truck. Your LDL or bad cholesterol is your garbage. Your HDL is your garbage trucks. So the more garbage trucks you have around to remove that fat from your body, the better off you are. So we really do look at your HDL. If you've got more HDL, but you're much better off with a much lower cardiovascular risk. How can you get up your HDL? Limiting carbohydrates. Decreasing carbohydrates in your diet, exercise, and the omega-3s may bump it up a little bit too. Your body makes cholesterol in your liver. Cholesterol helps build cell membranes, and I said before, it helps to stabilize that membrane and is used to synthesize the steroid hormone like estrogen, testosterone, and vitamin D and bile salts that are used in fat digestion. Dietary cholesterol has little effect on blood levels. So here are some conversions, and you can take a look at them. You guys all have that in your handout, but this is really important, especially when you're looking at sugar. And that's, you know, trying to weed out on your label, which we'll talk a little bit, the food labels, trying to figure out what's that good carb and what are looking at the sugars on the label. So we'll talk about that. 2015 Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee. Dietary guidelines for Americans revised every 5 years. The American diet is deficient in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and too abundant in sugar and salt. The guidelines added sugar should account for less than 10% of the calories, or 12.5 teaspoons of sugar in a day, which 1 can of regular soda has 9 teaspoons of sugar. So I'm going to use my other visual here right now. This is about amount of sugar in a sweetened drink, like an iced tea, a sweetened iced tea. This is also the sugar equivalent in 2 slices of bread, a cup of pasta, a cup of brown rice. So we start chewing, we have enzymes in our saliva that start breaking that sugary substance into its basic component of blood sugar and raise our blood sugar quite quickly. So this always kind of impresses people about how much, you know, sugar equivalent we have in some of the foods that we're eating. Saturated fat should not exceed 10% of the calories. Cholesterol is not a nutrient of concern for overconsumption. Cholesterol consumed in food is thought to play a relatively insignificant role in determining blood levels of cholesterol. Sustainability, addressed for the first time, a diet higher in fish and plant-based foods is better for us and the planet. Recommended diet is low in red and processed meats. And I don't know if you guys have seen or heard news stories about how much of the animals, what they're doing to our environment, so it is quite interesting. Eggs and shellfish, while high in cholesterol, these are low in saturated fat. Cholesterol in food does not appear to raise blood cholesterol levels. So the idea now is that 2 eggs a day, yolk included, are okay for us and should not drive up our cholesterol levels. And just to know, the egg yolk and the egg white together make the egg the egg white, the protein in egg white, much more nutritious for us. Egg whites alone are not as nutritious as when the yolk is combined with it. So that's interesting. Coffee in moderation, 3 to 5 cups, does not pose a health risk. It is associated with a decrease in diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and Parkinson's. It is a stimulant, so you could have a sensitivity to it. Also, an excess amount can deplete your bone mineralization or bone health, so it's something that we talk about. But it does increase the sensitivity of our insulin. It's thought to. It's also a very potent antioxidant, meaning that it's really a cancer protector. Also lowers risk for colon cancer really significantly, like I think somewhere around 50 to 60%. So it is really, we never tell you not to drink coffee unless it's too much. Alcohol in moderation, women should be aware that there is an increased risk for breast cancer. Salt, limiting to 2,300 milligrams a day, and that has recently changed from 1,500. Unless you have existing cardiovascular disease, then it's at 1,500 milligrams. Water, replace sweetened beverages with water. Artificial sweeteners, there's no recommendation for substituting sugar with low-calorie artificial sweeteners. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. In defense of food, that's from that book. The world's longest-lived, healthiest populations have diets that vary widely in total fat content. However, all emphasize minimally processed foods and eating mostly plants. So here is the healthy eating plate that we're pretty well aware of. Current food labels have serving size, servings per container, fat, calories, cholesterol, sodium, carbohydrate, the total, fiber, sugars, and sugar alcohols, protein, and percent of daily values. And that's what the current guideline, the current food label looks like. Proposed new food labeling for 2018. For the first time since food labels were introduced in the 1990s, there are proposed changes to food labeling to include added sugar values, update the daily values for sodium, fiber, vitamin D, amount of potassium and vitamin D. Potassium is very important for heart health, very important. And that's from dietary sources. Calories from fat will be removed. The type of fat is more important than the amount. Serving size will reflect how people eat and drink today, so they will be updated. Serving size and calories will be more prominent on the label, and it will look like this. So potassium is as important for blood pressure reduction as sodium restriction is. So a diet rich in potassium is as important as sodium restriction, so for blood pressure lowering. Salt. Your body needs salt to function properly. Sodium helps maintain the right balance of fluids. Sodium helps transmit nerve impulses, influences the contraction and relaxation of muscles. Your kidneys regulate your body's store of sodium for optimal health. Too much sodium increases blood volume and can lead to high blood pressure, heart disease, kidney disease, and stroke. Sources of sodium include processed and prepackaged foods, table salt, baked goods, cheese, deli meats, and condiments. Hidden sodium on food labels, MSG. Baking soda, baking powder, disodium phosphate, sodium alginate, sodium nitrate, or nitrite. The average American gets 3,400 milligrams of sodium per day. Recommended is less than 2,300. Recommended intake for people with hypertension is less than 1,500. Try to avoid products with more than 200 milligrams of sodium per serving. Sodium or salt-free labels contain less than 5 milligrams, very low, less than 35. Low sodium labels contain less than 140. Water. Water makes up approximately 60% of your body weight. Water flushes out toxins, carries nutrients to the cells, decreases hunger, and helps your body metabolize fat. Recommended water intake depends on how active you are, your health, and where you live. Due to heat, humidity, and altitude, we recommend 64 ounces daily or 8 8-ounce glasses. Dehydration occurs when you don't have enough water in your body to carry out normal functions. Dehydration can make you feel tired, cause headaches, dry skin, muscle cramps, constipation, lightheadedness. As we age, we lose our thirst impulse. So we may not, have that that thirst impulse that we really truly need. Alcohol. Excessive alcohol use contributes to obesity, heart disease, cancers, diabetes, insulin resistance, sleep problems, increased appetite, impaired judgment, difficulties concentrating, hypertension, liver disease, memory loss, snoring, stroke, depression, stomach ulcers, impaired reflexes, and possibly pancreatitis. Alcohol lessens the body's ability to burn fat. It's metabolized as a priority as your body perceives it as a toxin. Alcohol is a toxin and wants to get rid of it. Alcohol promotes fat storage and contributes to abdominal or central adiposity, truncal obesity. Alcohol in moderation may have some health benefits. 1 alcohol beverage per day for women, 2 alcohol beverages for men. Alcohol provides 7 calories per gram. The excess is stored as fat. For the purpose of our weight loss, though, we do ask for less than 2 alcoholic drinks per week because we are really in the active weight loss phase and we consider it really empty calories, but it's a real trigger for eating too much. It really is. So that's what WeCare asks. Artificial sweeteners include aspartame, which is NutraSweet or equal, saccharin, sweet and low, sucralose or Splenda. Others there are other ones. And artificial sweeteners are synthetic sugar substitutes. Artificial sweeteners are 100 times sweeter than sugar. Artificial sweeteners are also known as intense sweeteners, very low calorie sweeteners, non-nutritive sweeteners, sugar substitutes. The fact about the safety of artificial sweeteners is not clear-cut. Studies have shown that replacing sugar-sweetened beverages with artificial sweeteners does not improve weight loss. Artificial sweeteners may increase sugar and carbohydrate cravings. Our body sense an intense sweetness and they are expecting the calories to follow. High amounts of sweet taste impact how much we need to feel satisfied. It affects our gut microbiome, which I just talked about. But when you give up artificial sweeteners, and I don't know if any of you have done this, your taste buds come alive and all of a sudden foods really taste good, fruits and vegetables. So it really benefits us, even from a eating better standpoint, to really appreciate the taste of an apple or carrots or whatever. And if you drink a lot of diet soda and you stop, I think that you might know what I'm talking about. Natural sweeteners. Table sugar is sucrose, which equals fructose and glucose. Glucose is our primary source of energy. Insulin is secreted in response to our sugar intake. Processed carbohydrates like breads, pasta, rice, cookies, candies, cakes, cereals, and granolas break down sugar almost immediately and cause a spike in our insulin level. Glucose is used for quick energy. Glycogen stores in the liver and muscle are used for quick energy, and energy is stored as fat. AKA sugar, agave, date sugar, galactose, maltodextrin, all of these, you can read all of these equals sugar. So they really hide sugar in your labels. So really look close when you're looking at the ingredient labels. Sugar addictions. Sugar stimulates the production of serotonin and makes people feel better. Sugar stimulates the release of endorphins that suppress pain and produce a euphoric feeling. Sugar stimulates the pleasure center of the brain and releases dopamine. Sugar stimulates the same receptors as nicotine, cocaine, heroin, and alcohol. We crave sugar, binge on sugar, develop tolerance, and go through withdrawal if we don't have sugar. So this is really dangerous. It really is, dangerous stuff, and it really, it taps into the addiction center in the brain. So we really have an appreciation for what sugar does, and but with that said, getting rid of sugar is a possible thing, and we talk about that frequently. Insulin. Insulin is necessary to get glucose into the cells for energy. Insulin is secreted by the pancreas in response to sugar or glucose intake. Insulin is a fat storage hormone. It causes central obesity. Insulin can also cause hunger, carbohydrate, and sugar cravings. Our blood sugar and insulin level respond differently to proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. So this is a graph that I like to show very frequently. So what happens is we talked about we are chewing. We have enzymes, amylase and lipase in our saliva that start breaking down that sugary, carby product. And blood sugar is immediately absorbed, or sugar is immediately absorbed and goes into the bloodstream. So there's that red spike. So blood sugar is going up, and it goes up pretty quickly within a half hour, 45 minutes. And insulin has to go with it. Insulin protects us from our blood sugar. Blood sugar, really is dangerous. So blood sugar and insulin go up, and then through the use of insulin, blood sugar comes down, and it comes down quite quickly. And down at the end of that curve right there, we are feeling hungry. We might be irritable. We might not be sleeping well, but we are likely could be craving carbohydrates. So we want to get rid of that red curve, and that's when we talk about being that cave woman. Fruits, vegetables, nuts, meats, eggs, and dairy, and legumes, because we're getting rid of that curve, and over time. So the tendency is we eat those foods, we're craving them again, we want to do this again, and again, and again. And our pancreas is on overtime, secreting all that insulin to protect us. And that's our setup for insulin resistance. Our insulin stops working as well. We start producing more insulin, or the pancreas does, and that trend of just overproduction, insulin not working as well, can really mean can lead to insulin resistance, which is a precursor for diabetes. So we need to get rid of that red curve. Proteins, blood sugar is much more stable. Proteins help our sugar stay more stable over 8 to 9 hours. Fat's even longer yet, really over 12 hours. And so it's really important that we're eating those fats and proteins. Exercise can lower that blood sugar curve too, and that can last up to 24 hours. So the exercise that you do today really can protect you for 24 hours. And there are studies that show that in people with diabetes. Eat this, then that. A study in July 2015 found, this is very interesting, that people with type 2 diabetes, the order in which they eat their food can affect their blood sugar level. Eating carbohydrate last produced lower blood glucose and insulin levels, and it was a significant amount. So, eating your protein or your fat first and your carbohydrate last impacted their blood sugar. So we could maybe deduce that people without diabetes might have that same reaction to sugar, and or to fat or protein, to stabilize our blood sugar longer. The bottom line: eating too much sugar, whether it's sugar alcohols, agave, stevia, honey, white sugar, high fructose corn syrup, will result in weight gain. Recent studies have demonstrated that diet soda increases weight gain, risk of stroke and heart attack, risk of diabetes, risk of hunger and sugar cravings, increased risk for depression, and increased osteoporosis. I saw a study once, 1 to 2 cola-colored sodas a week decreased bone density significantly. So we have to really pay attention to this. And I don't know if it's currently, but last I knew, it was one of the top leading cause of death for women, osteoporosis. So, one of the top 5. Smart grocery shopping. Eat before you shop. Never shop on an empty stomach, as hunger lowers your resistance to temptation. I think we all know that. Bring a list. Get organized, focused, efficient. Pre-planning, I think, is one of the cornerstones of success here. Read labels. Check serving size, number of servings, the fat, carbohydrate, protein content, and sodium content. If you are journaling on a MyFitnessPal, it will lovely tell you everything that you need to know with just a few clicks. It has a label reader on it, so you just press this, your camera lights up, you scan that barcode, and it will tell you everything about the product. Or you put it in, search for it, it's easy, it comes up, but it really nicely tells you everything that's in that product, and you tell it serving size, and at the end of the day, you add it all up. And it's a nice way. When we think a lot about food, we want to have things that take its place. We talk a lot about maybe your hobbies or what you like to do, but using that as a tool to enjoy this a little bit more, and to really, look at your successes at the end of the day, how you're doing. Stay along the periphery. The food along the periphery of the grocery store tends to be less processed. Whole foods are better for your health. Food journaling can be done on paper, phone apps, or computer websites. It's important for monitoring. Food journaling holds you accountable for your choices. It changes how you eat. It can help you override the urge to give into emotional eating. It helps you guide you to make better choices. So what I do, I think everybody has a vulnerable time in your day to, if you are journaling, either paper or on an app, to look at that before your vulnerable time and, try to give you that wherewithal to make it through that vulnerable time. Let medicine be thy food and food be thy medicine. To ensure good health, eat lightly, breathe deeply, live moderately, cultivate cheerfulness, maintain an interest in life. So I think we will end with that, and I will take any questions that you might have. We are not getting enough calcium in our diet. Calcium intake really can help prevent or preserve our bone density. It's important that we have it really throughout the lifespan. Calcium, vitamin D makes our calcium usable to the bones. Calcium is really important in weight loss too. If you are getting a calcium-rich diet, not calcium supplements, we have a better chance of losing weight. So calcium intake is really important. For the non-menopausal woman, 1,000 milligrams per day. For the menopausal woman, 1,500 milligrams per day is one of the recommendations. And so say for a yogurt, a glass of milk might be like 300 milligrams. It takes a lot of calcium to meet our daily needs. Kefir is a great, I love kefir. I talk a lot about kefir. It's really rich in probiotics. It really helps that gut flora be smarter. It's a fermented yogurt, and I don't want to say fermented yogurt because that sounds bad. So I did not try it for a long time, and then I tried it. I tried the blueberry first. I'm like, this is a delicious smoothie. Great for reflux. And it's really thought to make our gut smarter and maybe less inflammation. So I do recommend kefir, really good source of calcium too. Sometimes we don't know how lactose tolerant we all are. How tolerant are we to milk, to cow's milk? And that the jury is a little out on that, but if you are doing something like kefir or a Greek yogurt, you're getting much less lactose, and it should be more tolerated. A lot of people that have lactose intolerance are able to eat hard cheeses and yogurt, but kefir is a great source of calcium. So pay attention to your calcium goals and to preserve your bone health or improve your bone health. Make sure your vitamin D, whether you're at WeCare or after WeCare, you're getting it checked and that you've got a healthy amount of vitamin D to make that calcium usable to the bones. And but so just pay attention to that, and that's another benefit from using MyFitnessPal, which incidentally I don't own a share of, but I do talk a lot about it. But it can show you am I meeting my calcium goals.